I love art history because it is a multi-disciplined subject. Within it, you don't just talk about painting, architecture, sculpture and history. You can also find yourself talking about theology, politics, music, science, engineering. Velázquez is one of my favourite artists, and one of my favourite paintings is this one behind us of Philip IV of Spain. It's amazing seeing it from two different perspectives. From here, when we look at Philip IV, we can see that he has this beautiful brown and silver suit on. The silver looks like it's encrusting the brown material below. Lots of silver shining out with these beautiful silver sleeves. Yet the closer we go, as we walk towards the painting, and this is the genius of Velázquez, we see that his brushstrokes become more and more and more impressionist. He was able to envisage what something would have looked like from a distance, yet up close there's a completely different effect. And of course this painting would have been seen from a distance. It would have been at the end of a long corridor in one of the royal palaces in Madrid, and only the people who were closest to the king would have been able to get up close and personal to it. Talking about impressionistic brushstrokes, check this out. Now, this is Velázquez's Rokeby Venus, again another absolutely stunning work by Velázquez. And he has been extraordinary with his brushstrokes. There's one particular one that I want to point out. Can you see this black brushstroke here that goes from almost her ankle right the way along underneath her bottom and up round the side of her back. Now, Monet wasn't even doing this several hundred years later. This is incredibly groundbreaking and impressionistic. In 1914, something extraordinary happened to this painting. A woman called Mary Richardson came into the National Gallery and did this. Now, you'd barely know it looking at the incredible restoration job today, but what she was doing was fighting on behalf of her great mate, Emmeline Pankhurst, who'd just been thrown into prison as a suffragette. And what Mary Richardson wanted to say was, you have just put away the most beautiful woman on this earth today, therefore I want to destroy the most beautiful woman, Venus, in history. And that's exactly what she did. This is one of the great places to stand in the National Gallery. Behind me we have Velázquez's portrait of Philip IV of Spain and Van Dyck's portrait of Charles I of England. In 1623, when Philip IV had just become king, Charles, who was the Prince of Wales at the time, made a visit to Spain. He went to Spain because he wanted to woo the Infanta, and the Infanta was the sister of Philip IV. Charles's ministers back in England didn't want him to go in the slightest bit, but away he went with the Duke of Buckingham. The Duke of Buckingham was his father's boyfriend and didn't have a particularly good reputation back in England. They went to Spain, they dressed up in false beards and hats. They named themselves John and Thomas Smith, and off they went to Spain. It all ended in disaster, with the Duke of Buckingham behaving very badly, the Infanta rejecting Charles, and them going back home to England with their tails between their legs. Now, when Charles was out there, he would have seen the relationship between Philip IV of Spain and Velázquez, and he realised that he too wanted his own artist. He spent an awfully long time trying to persuade Rubens to become his court artist, but Rubens wasn't interested. Rubens wanted to go back home. But Rubens's second in command, Van Dyck, was available. Charles I was 5 foot, he was bandy-legged, he was a bit of a weakling, and he needed a way in which to look grand and noble and mighty in his portraits. So what did Van Dyck come up with? Put him on a horse. So when we look at this portrait of Charles I, does he look like a bandy-legged weakling? Not at all. He's looking noble, he's looking out into the distance as though he's about to command the army. Just a side point, can you see how he's got some high heels on? Because Charles I was so small, He actually needed some heels to be taller than everyone else. But of course, the fashion was led by the king, so everyone else started wearing heels too.